Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Economic Development Meeting. Tonight is Monday, February 10th. Audra, can you have the record show that all members are present along with our city planner and our city administrator? Our first item of business is to consider approval of minutes from December 9th, 2024.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ryan.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ryan, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is our bills and communication.
Madam President, nothing in the packet this evening, but I'll probably make a process out of update every so often on the EDA lease revenue bonds. So they were closed on December 30th with deposits at US Bank. So as of the end of January, there's $17,840,935 left in the construction. And in the bond fund, there are $815,085. So $815,085. So we have made two draws on the construction fund, one for issuance and two to reimburse expenditures prior to the bonds issuance. So the process will be very similar to a PFA draw request, where we'll assemble paid invoices and a request form on a monthly basis and send that to US Bank, and then remits that money back to the city. That's all I have for item 3, unless there's any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Could you give me the first number again?
Yes, that's $17,840,935.
And that is the.
This is the
Construction.
construction. So at US Bank, there are two accounts, one for debt service and one for construction.
Okay.
Questions? Okay. Moving on to item 4, new business. Officers is the first item.
Madam President, a routine election here for the Board of Commissioners. So in your packet, there is an R and a possible motion, but the bylaws of the EDA do outline that officers shall be elected on an annual basis. Those positions include a president, a vice president, a treasurer, assistant treasurer, and secretary. I will note that typically the secretary is a staff member, usually the city clerk, is familiar with signing documents and taking the meeting minutes for the EDA. So a motion would be in order to nominate officers for the City of Otsego EDA.
Council.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to nominate Mayor Stockamp as president. Do I have to do all of them?
It's really up to the Board of Commissioners. If a member wants to nominate a full slate, they can do that, or you can handle them individually.
Council.
I'll second.
Okay. We'll go one by one. We have a motion, President from Corey, seconded from Ryan. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Madam President,
Yes.
motion to nominate Tina for vice president.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, motion by Corey, seconded by Michelle. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next we have treasurer.
Treasurer, excuse me, assistant treasurer and secretary.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I'm sorry.
The 3 remaining officer positions would be the treasurer, assistant treasurer, and the secretary.
I just didn't know what you said. Sorry. I didn't hear.
Sorry.
Madam Mayor, or Madam President. Like to nominate Ryan for treasurer.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Corey, seconded by Michelle. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Madam President, I
Yes,
could have done this in one swoop.
yeah,
I'd like to nominate Michelle for assistant treasurer.
is there a second?
Second.
Corey, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Can't stop there.
Yeah.
I'll nominate, Corey Tanner for
Should we,
secretary, or is that not?
Is this the appointed?
Who's the appointed? I'm sorry.
it's
Uh,
the staff on this.
Up to the board, but typically the secretary would be a staff member, but the bylaws don't require it to be a commissioner, so it can be a staff member. The duties typically align with that of the city clerk, so.
I'll change that. Strike that. I'll nominate Audra.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Michelle, seconded by Ryan to nominate Audra for secretary. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to item 4.2, the official newspaper.
Madam President, in the packet is an RCA, and also a resolution designating a paper, very similar process to what the city council does on an annual basis. So if there are any noticing requirements by statute that the EDA has to conduct, the Star News is the recommended official newspaper for the EDA.
Madam President,
Yes, right.
I move resolution 2025-01 designating an official newspaper.
Second.
Motion by Ryan, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item 4.3, official depository.
Madam President, again, a slew of kind of routine transactions here, but in the packet, there is an RCA and the resolution declaring official depository. With the issuance of the lease revenue bond, necessitate that you declare a depository for those funds. In this case, there's also been an indenture of trust adopted as part of the issuance process. So US Bank is declared as the official depository in the resolution of the packet.
Madam,
Yes, right.
I move to approve resolution 2025-02 designating depositories.
Second.
Motion by Ryan, seconded by Corey. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item 5 is old business.
Madam President, I'm not aware of any open items from previous EDA meetings.
We'll move on to reports, the 6.1 and report.
All right, Madam President, in your packet, there is a short memo outlining a few different, I'll kind of walk you through, and then there's some supporting materials that we can have some discussion on at the discretion of the Board of Commissioners. But an outline has been prepared just to kind of give an update on funds more aligned with economic development. So there is a fund within the city's financial statements, 55 economic development revolving. At year end, there is an unaudited cash balance of 389,000. I say unaudited as we have not made all of our year end accruals and or adjustments, interest allocations. So that balance is subject to change slightly depending on some of those audit adjustments. There are two components of fund balance, the first being restricted and the second is unassigned. So again, those align with government accounting standards that we report in our financial statements. The restricted is consistent with statewide affordable housing aid. So this was something new from the legislature. The city has received allocations in 23 and 24, totaling that 105,000. We are expected to receive an additional aid of 2025, just under 24,000. So we're talking about roughly 130,000 that would be restricted at the end of 2025 for statewide affordable housing aid. There is a snippet of some from the State Department of Revenue website in terms of how this aid can be used. There are pretty strict restrictions about what this type of aid can be used. So I will report that as of today, staff does not have a recommendation for the board on how to proceed with that, or the city council. There are numerous cities throughout the area statewide that are really trying to learn how to use this aid to its best ability. So we're continuing to work on that. I think most potential lies with partnering with the county on this. So the county received aid, and then any cities over 10,000. So city of Otsego, city of Monticello, Buffalo, and St. Michael were the 4 cities that received direct aid in addition to Wright. The county is hiring a position dedicated to housing tasks in 2025, and they have tasked this person with providing a recommendation to the board on how to use this aid. And we can partner with that program and use the city aid dollars to kind of collaborate on that. So I can answer any questions on that. Again, the restrictions placed by the legislature on this funding is in your packet. Just kind of want to give you some funding that is available to use.
Is there a timeline that we need to be working towards?
Well, we have to spend some by.
Yeah, there are time restrictions, so it outlines that funds have to be obligated by the end of the 3rd year after receiving the aid, spent after the 4th year, or before the end of the 4th year receiving the aid. So the first aid was received in 2023, which means that you'd have to spend that money by the end of 2027, and then each subsequent year.
Adam, so I talked to you today about this because I called with some questions. And you told me about the county looking to fill a role, and that would be potentially a good pair. But do you know anything more about what that role with the county is going to do? Because there's only limited cities that got this money, and that just doesn't seem like it would be enough for a full-time job. I guess I'm not. You can direct me a little bit on that.
Madam President, I don't believe the position was created for the sole purpose. I believe that's just something that they're tasked person to do. So.
Okay. And it's not like working with the economic development group, is it?
As of right now, I mean, the Wright County, I don't want to speak for fact. I believe they have an economic development authority. Very similar to most cities. There's just not a ton of activity through that. The county and cities throughout Wright County also partners with the Economic Development Partnership, which is a separate entity county, but they do provide significant funding to that organization.
Mm-hmm.
So
They're housed out of.
I don't know what the full slate of responsibilities for the position is, but I don't believe it's intended to be, this is the sole purpose for that. So.
Is there a time for that person to be onboarded, and then do we have that information at this point in time from the county?
I asked county administration that, and their goal was sometime in the fall of 2025, that person would be able to make a recommendation to the board. It's not for certain that they're going to partner with cities, but I think the cities in Wright County are hoping for that, just to kind of make the most of the dollars received in the county. Most of these programs, given this is new aid, don't exist, or we don't have staffing in most of our cities designated towards housing. So it's something that I'm hopeful that we can partner on.
Can you share with them also about the city of Buffalo? Because we talked about that today too.
Yeah, some cities are looking to just administer their programs and not pool the funds together. That's that they ensure that that aid stays within their own community, or they want to have controls that maybe don't align with the programs that other cities or counties are looking to implement. So I think it's more of just they want us to handle it themselves. So
Madam President,
Yes.
what is the criteria for cities to receive the aid?
So there were two different, sorry, President, there were two different programs set up by the state legislature. One metrocentric, and the other one that the city of Otsego falls under is called the statewide affordable housing aid program. And so the allocation was direct to cities in excess of 10,000. Otherwise, the money was allocated to the county.
So it's something we could probably expect will continue.
I don't believe it's expected to continue in perpetuity. I think there is a sunset on the program
Okay.
as far as being able to provide that ongoing revenue source from the state.
And I'm assuming that's why so much. Then.
I think that's a fair assumption. So more of an update, but just wanted to kind of make that clear to the EDA. That is part of the fund balance. The other amount is considered unassigned, which means there's no restrictions, local control on that. Is $283,932. So all of this balance would be available to the city's revolving loan policy that we do have. That policy is in your packet, and I think just wanted again to bring it up and make sure that all of you were aware of that program. As far as staff goes, I don't believe we're have ever issued from this program within the city, adopted in 2013. So there's not been any revisions to that
So,
policy. So,
Sora got, it was family speech and therapy at the time. So,
that would have been a tax abatement program, so not a.
Madam President, I think it was intended that they were going to apply for the loan, but then they didn't.
okay, because I know that
But that's
we
why
kind of got this in,
set up for-
we got it kind of set up for them originally.
So is this really for creating new thing, opportunities,
This one isn't housing, this is jobs, businesses.
jobs? And
Yeah, again, I can't speak to what the intent was in 2013. I wasn't here, but typically, and this is a common program you'll find throughout cities in Minnesota. I think it's kind of intended to be a gap financing. So if it's a larger project, there's owner equity contributions, there's bank financing, and then there might be some gap financing through a loan program like this. That the intent is to,
And it was only a max of 50,000.
the program is maxed out at 50,000. There are certain criteria as to what eligible costs can be applied for the loan, what the contributions from private financing need to be. So again, it is a policy that we have in place. It's just not been used. I would say I've had a few inquiries on the program in the past. One example being the ceramic business that in Waterfront West was the last business that I can recall that inquired about the loan policy but didn't pursue that. So
And that same ceramic business during the COVID funds too, they had applied, but hadn't opened very long.
right, I think there were certain criteria that they didn't meet in order to receive that COVID aid.
yeah, it looks like one of the criteria is for a lot of newer businesses would be difficult.
I do think it warrants some revisiting. I did obtain a similar policy from another city in Wright County that I could kind of cross-reference and determine items that are similar and items that are not, and make some recommendations for some minor changes. I do think it's a nice policy to have in place. And maybe there's ways that you can make it a little more appetizing without creating too much risk on behalf of the city.
Corey?
Madam President, Dan, have you ever heard of cities really utilizing this like in Lakeville or?
So Lakeville does have more aggressive uh, economic development efforts and assistance programs, so
Kind of use it for to
correct.
get business.
Especially in the older industrial park, where it would be used similar to what was done here with family speech and therapy, taking an outmoded building and bringing it up to standard, so.
Yeah, I mean, to generalize that, that's your target market, a historical downtown or an older retail environment that they're looking to freshen their appearance on the exterior and make it more appealing to consumers. So,
And Boondock said at the same time had inquired about this.
Right.
Cause that building got an update when that went from Godfathers to Boondocks.
Madam President?
Mhm.
What's the source of the funds? Is it tax levy?
Madam President, again, most of the funds that are housed here were originally deposited from a conduit bond policy that the city has. So the city will, on occasion, issue bonds as a conduit issuer. The two outstanding issues that we have right now, one are Kaleidoscope Charter School, and the other is Evans Park, which is the parent company for Guardian Angels.
It's when the property in Albertville, their conduit bond for Guardian Angels and then Kaleidoscope.
Yeah, so certain private organizations will issue financing for projects under the city's name, but they actually are not liabilities or obligations of the city. They don't have impact on your credit rating. But the city has a place that a certain percentage of the par amount of bonds issued come back to the city as a fee for being able to use that the city's name as the issuer. So that's really the primary source from where these funds came from. There's been interest revenue applied to that balance and allocated out each year.
Okay.
At the time, it was just a good use of those funds to put it in hopes as incentives for other businesses to. So thought process was on that.
But so technically it's unrestricted, though. We could use it for any purpose.
Madam President, that's correct. The unassigned balance of 283,000, it's not restricted for economic development. Way.
Okay.
So I would say, given your comments, Adam, about other programs that are similar, but potentially different, I would like to see what those are, what other cities have in place.
Yeah,
Would too. Agreed.
get some
If you
ideas.
could get us that information.
Madam President, I could easily review the policies or try and obtain another one to see where they're similar and where they're not. The city that I did obtain the policy from, I know they just recently issued a loan from it. And so it is relevant to that community.
Okay.
So,
Madam President.
Mhm.
Has anybody applied recently?
No,
Oh,
but it's not that that's not an option for them.
Mhm.
But as Adam and I talked about it today too, it's sometimes a lot of work for $10 and that this isn't a need or it hasn't been to date. But it is a tool, obviously, that we want to be able to use if businesses need that.
So
Mhm.
we do get inquiries from time to time about, especially industrial projects, what kinds of incentives does the city offer? So, at the top end, of course, for a big major project would be tax increment financing or abatement. The typical incentive provider assistance would be assessment of development fees like SAC and WAC fees or the connection fees. And then, it would have to be a relatively small project for the loan project or program to assist. So if something came up, for example, in the industrial park at the south end of Trunk Highway 101, on one of those properties. Maybe that's something we can use money from that dispersed from. Or the older Mississippi Shores commercial development.
Are there really, I mean, what buildings are not necessarily new, now that,
Riverview
Sora.
Liquorette,
Kind of.
yeah,
still
I guess,
Boondocks.
yeah, Boondocks, if they wanted to do something.
Christchurch property, potentially.
And could it apply to, additions and stuff like that to existing buildings?
Yeah, it's not completely limited to renovations. It can be used for new construction, land acquisition.
Sure.
As part of the overall housing package, so.
Good info.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Right, Madam President, the city planner would like to kind of weed it into the next piece, it's outlining the strategies and priorities policy, and that policy again has been in place, last amended in 2018. Staff is looking for a little direction on this policy, whether the board wants to consider it to help assist staff in those conversations on when financial incentives are applicable to a development and when they're not. Again, it outlines some of those mentioned already: tax increment financing, tax abatement, the economic development law policy, certification of SAC and WAC fees. Where it probably lends benefit on the staff side of the equation is centered around on the second page of the policy, high priority, medium and low priority projects. And, there's been quite a bit of development since 2018. And I think it would be good for the board and the city council to review this policy to make sure it aligns with your current viewpoints on incentivizing economic development. So there may be something in the high priority that you as a group no longer feel would warrant financial assistance, which then streamlines the conversation with prospective developers that council just reviewed this policy in 2025. We don't support providing incentive to this type of project, and we can really save ourselves a lot of time.
Madam President,
Yes, Bri.
Dan would, we possibly might have to, depending on what we would come back, with the comprehensive plan.
Mayor, no, this essentially helps implement the recommendations of the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So we already have, areas guided for commercial or industrial. And then there are policies that direct the EDA and or city to establish economic development programs and incentives. So this is just a step of implementing the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
I think it would be good to just release. I mean, I know that I look at senior housing development with amenities. At one time, that was a high priority for us. So we have moved things around on this list as those have come into the city. So I do think making sure we're all in agreement on that. Are you anticipating like a different meeting, or would this be kind of with the council?
I
We're kind of
mean,
doing goal
we have
setting.
we have some time. I do think that it would align well with strategic planning potentially, or more of a goal setting conversation. But if there are things that you're absolute about here this evening, we can certainly take that into consideration. So
I guess I see it as a really good tie into goal setting for the council, just because as we are setting those other goals, it falls in line with what the priority of where we want to see the city going to. So, I mean, I wouldn't feel like that low, housing, we haven't had the issue of people not able to come to the city and build here. So I can't think of a reason why we would move that up higher at this point. But that's just me, but I'm willing to do the exercise with everyone to see if these all match.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look at this category and say, well, they're all priorities for the city to add
Sure.
each kind of development that's listed out here. It's more of a conversation. Which type of project would you entertain an application for an incentive? Because it is a lengthy process. The developer would be required to deposit escrow money, engage a fiscal consultant to help the city and the EDA evaluate those types. So it does turn into a long process. And it puts the EDA, the council, in a spot where you have to make a decision on something if you allow it to get there. But if you know as a group ahead of that, you don't want to see a duplication of a TIF request for this type of project, then we can stem that off a lot earlier.
Makes sense.
Everybody good with,
It's always easier to say no up front. Like,
Yeah.
what's your favorite word, Dan? Is everybody good with that?
For discussing it at the work session.
Yeah, it sounds like there's more desire to have more of a focused conversation around just generic. Is that fair?
I agree.
Sure.
Review and research.
Sliding down the memo, I did include an update on each of the 3 TIF districts. I apologize, it did not. It's abatement district, but so there are 3 active TIF districts. I provided a brief summary of what each of those was for, when they were issued, and when they will ultimately expire. So district number 1 in Great River Center is nearing its end. So that will be tax increment district through 2026. And then the last note payment is of that second half 2026 tax settlement. So for taxes payable 2027, the capacity for this property will be inserted back into the net tax capacity and help distribute that amongst the city when setting the tax rate of the tax levy. So the other 2 are, sorry, go ahead.
Madam President,
Mhm.
is that, the 3, is it Rivers Bend, Guardian Angels, and then the apartment complex?
Great River Center is the PNF machine
Oh,
property. Riverview Landing would be the senior housing facility. And Riverbend North is the mini storage, 2 commercial lots, and the apartments that were constructed. So they're each different type of districts and have different criteria that they had to meet. One is economic development. One is housing. So there's an affordability requirement that 20% have to be available to those at a certain percentage of the median income within the county. So affordable housing. And then the last one was a redevelopment district. So it removed blight from a certain development area and allowed new development and provide tax base and new opportunities there.
So that timeline. Sorry, Madam President, so that from my understanding, the timeline for those particular projects or says that timeline's running out for them for the tax incentive reductions, right?
So the a TIF district is more of a reimbursement for improvements that were made on the site. So the developers, the property owners, these properties, they pay all of their property taxes just like any other property would. And then the city issues a note to them for the improvements that were made. So there's a wide range of costs that can be applied to that. And so we're essentially using the new generated from their development to help repay for certain site improvements.
But that is coming to an end, so those are dollars that will remain within the city then and not being that they would be dispersed back to, is that timeline?
In after the note payment in 2027, then the taxes get redistributed. So the increment that comes in is actually all 3 taxing authorities from the county, the city, and the school district are being applied to incentivize that development. Once that note in the district is decertified, then all three of those entities go back to receiving the allocation based on the market value, tax capacity of a project.
Madam President, so,
That's right.
so essentially what happens is they're no longer able to get certain reimbursements for improvements on their property.
Madam President, that's correct.
Okay.
And all of that's defined upfront. This isn't an evolution. The time of application as part of the creation of a TIP district, the council and the EDA go through a process to vet that and then define a certain dollar amount that is substantiated by improvements. Say that this is what the note amount will be. And that's based on analysis. We usually engage a consultant to help say, we know what the tax value is today. We have an estimate from what the improvement will provide, and then using that increment or that delta to help define what that note and how much the generate to repay those notes. The one I didn't include, I'll just give a brief update on the tax abatement in the Parkview retail area. So this is a joint abatement between the city and Wright County. So the city provided some infrastructure improvements in the Parkview retail area and pledged the upfront cash to make those improvements, which then in turn created development in that area. So what the city and the county captures and the city captures the increase in tax capacity and ultimately tax revenue, and we are reimbursing for the infrastructure investment that was made in that area. So the county will reimburse the city up to 400,000, and then has the balance of the project. So each year we estimate what the tax bill for those properties will be on the city side, and then we use that to reimburse the infrastructure investment that was made. And then the county does the same thing. They take of the new taxes developed in that area and reimburse the city for that.
Madam President.
Mhm.
So Parkview Retail, is that the Coburn's
Coburn's.
area?
Yeah, so the tax abatement program for the slightly different than what the county. So the county agreed to the taxes from the Coburn's development and the apartment development.
Okay.
The cities did include some of the accessory outlots around the edge. So ours would include Dunkin' and the center, all the O2B Kids Daycare, Ace Hardware.
Sure.
So it was a slightly larger area that we're using to repay ourselves.
Madam President.
Mhm.
I think if I remember, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Wright County's the first time they had really done that with a city.
Correct.
Was that right? With the roundabout and everything.
Madam President, that is correct, and they have since implemented a policy to help other cities in this type of situation.
They had worked with Sherburne County. I remember Derek Fetch
Yeah.
having a conversation with him, and they had worked with Sherburne County to see how they had done this in the past. But to help get that project off the ground.
Yeah, it really took off.
Last item in my memo, and I can field any questions after that, but just giving a brief update. The city does own 3 parcels if you were not aware. 1 in Great River Center and 2 in Waterfront East. So those properties have been under listing agreements with Commercial Realty Solutions since 2019. The city does unfortunately still own each of those 3 lots and hasn't been approached with an offer that was acceptable to the city council for development of those. So kind of just giving an update and can answer any questions, but they are being marketed currently. So
For those, did we choose at the time to go with a couple developer or sales company, like Wayne Elam was one and then
Wayne Elam represents Commercial Realty Solutions, but at the time the council did solicit proposals from multiple listing
That's what
agents. Chose CRS at that point.
And there are some restrictions on 2 lot guardian angel.
There are deed restrictions. for the two waterfront east parcels. When that was subdivided, by Guardian Angels, they did place some deed restrictions on it.
Yes.
I had a quick question on that, Dan. Like, when deed requirements are set up, does the city have any involvement in that? Or,
Mayor, in that situation, we would have, since it was all part of the landing. Most cases, no. For example, if you look at where Coburn's is and where their gas station is.
Yeah.
Their original acquisition was the properties on the corner,
right,
but there was a deed restriction on that corner property because the original owner of it that for development was the same that owned the Holiday gas station. So he deed restricted to say you couldn't put another convenience gas station on that parcel, which then runs with the land, and he's the only one that could release that. So
okay.
that's why the gas station is where it is on the
Right,
Coburn's property.
pointed the other direction, much like the Great River Center and Target, right? Because they have those deed
Yeah,
restrictions.
they have deed restrictions both regarding uses as well as structure height within that development, so that there's always kind of a view shed of Target from 101 and County Road 4. So the ones in Riverview Landing, the city basically agreed on use limitations, so not gonna put a convenience gas station out in front of the senior housing, even though they probably ought to wander over there to get snacks, if not drive. But then also height limits.
And they have the right of first, they don't have the right of first.
They only,
refusal?
there's certain excluded uses,
Okay,
but they have no ability to control it beyond.
okay. Good to know.
Madam President,
Yes, right.
the property at 85th and Park,
The city does own, I don't know the exact acreage, just shy of 3 acres. At the intersection, well, it's not an intersection, Park Avenue comes from the south, 85th Street west, near the Colas round barn. So it's just west of County Road 42. The city does own that piece of property. It was purchased by the city from the property owner with the intent for public safety purposes. It was included as owned property within the fire study done in 2018. Helped guide the layout for where station locations could be.
is there a need to sell that at this point?
Madam President, I would defer that to the elected. I've never received direction up until now as to pursue that. We have been approached by land developers on whether the city would entertain that. I've never been given direction to pursue sale of that parcel up until now.
Madam President. So the Parish Meadows development adjacent to it, if they move forward with their second phase, they're required to build the street that would be along the east side of the city's property. All utilities for which we would have stubs to it. The layout of that subdivision anticipates that you could basically either develop it as a substation or develops 3 single-family lots in the manner the same directly to the north, so that it protected the city either to a potential reuse. The fire study in 2018 did look at that location. It said the ideal location for a second station would be slightly to the east and south, basically directly across from Otsego Elementary. But that the station had or that location had a comparable response time. So the intent, as outlined in the study, would that this would be a substation of the main station at 75th and Otsego.
President.
Yes, sir.
So Dan, you're saying, you know, it wouldn't be a good time right now because we're gonna get possible future stubs and a road going in and utilities, so why not wait more or less?
Madam President, I mean, that's one position to take, is that somebody else is gonna build the streets and utilities that make it into 3 potentially developable lots, increasing its value, so.
Madam President,
Yes.
in regards to the properties that we have listed and stuff, Is there a timeline that, we're concerned about in regards to how long we hold on to those properties? Not really.
Madam President, they are considered, I mean, they're tax exempt, so the city is not paying taxes on them currently. So there is not much in the terms of holding cost to the city other than highest and best use would be for industrial and or
Generate.
commercial development. So there's not really a need to sell them until you know, the beauty of this, the city owning them is that you get to control what the end user that comes. You know, as part of a property sale. If you know the intended use of a property and it doesn't align with the city's goals for economic development or job creation or tax base, you could certainly sale of that based on that. Whereas if you outright sold it to a land developer to kind of turn that cash over and get rid of that asset on the books, you lose some of that control, but you gain more of the near-term cash flow.
And the property next to PNF, I mean, we've had multiple conversations with that family.
Yeah, there have been offers made to the city which didn't align with the comprehensive or job creation, economic development goals. So there have been offers on that parcel, the 2 in Waterfront East. There's not ever been a formal offer made.
There was a daycare center that had kind of looked in that area, but
Yeah.
I think they couldn't get their finance.
And we probably meet with developers about the Great River Center industrial lot quite frequently. I would say 3 to 6 times a year, we're getting questions about that lot and how big of a building they could put on it. Some of those typical pre-application type of questions.
And there was a clause that PNF got the first right, but, and that's where I guess I'm going with this, that Dan from PNF has brought up multiple times that his intention is to business and to buy that other lot eventually, but either slowdowns in his business or just contracts not coming through have hindered that thus far.
Right, there was a agreement that is no longer valid. Time passing, or
Yes.
there was a right of first refusal that was granted to the developer of PNF. All of those have lapsed in terms of time at this point.
Madam President,
Mhm.
does Guardian Angels, do they still talk about phase 2 like they were before? And those properties right in front have restrictions, right? Height restrictions.
Madam President. So Guardian Angels owns the area north of their building up to Highway 101, basically to Carrick's Landing Park. So they do have the intent at some point in the future to develop that.
It's like a mirror, they were talking a mirror image of.
Actually, that one time they discussed more like a senior independent living, single level town development that would help transition into the building that's there because they have independent apartments, assisted, and then memory care within that. So it would make it that much more a complete campus.
Okay.
Makes sense. I mean, that seems to be the model.
Right.
For example, St. Trees built out in Corcoran.
Mhm.
Madam President, just out of curiosity, do we know how CRS is marketing properties that are available?
I would say your generic marketing efforts for commercial or retail or industrial and broker. So a website listing a property flyer, which we do have also on the city website. They do have signage. I assume that they're mentioning those parcels when they're approached by people looking for land within the city as options, you know, if they suit what they're looking to develop. You know, summarize it as that.
Madam President, CRS did just bring in a potential inquiry that probably isn't right for that site, but they are, because then they came in and talked with us, now we've helped them locate a different site that hopefully we can put them on at Queens Avenue, so.
It's good.
So I guess it is moving.
So one of the benefits of CRS is that they also deflect inquiries that the city's not interested in. The city could have developed mini storage 10 times over on that site, but definitely not a priority for suitability location, so.
Makes sense. Just a comment, when I attended, some other communities, Erie Chamber events. One of the things that I've seen for other communities, is advertisements, on the screen, like for, sponsors or what have you. It's advertisements, build in Maple Road, build in Woodbury, certain sites and certain things. And it's, I thought it was kind of interesting that other communities are sponsoring events to help facilitate sale. I'm not suggesting that we need to do that at this point in time, but it's an interesting idea.
So to kind of piggyback on Michelle, doesn't Wright County basically help us with that since we all are part of the group that they're kind of marketing each city that joins that group for us? So it's more of a larger pool.
Right, they're a group called the Economic Development Partnership I mentioned earlier. That is kind of a pseudo EDA on behalf of all of Wright County and its member cities that would also help. They commonly send out greater MSP or Indeed often send out RFPs for development. The Wright County DP does that kind of role. And again, they have a strong business membership and can help advertise for that when the time is right, but they're also a countywide and represent other cities. So they're entirely on behalf of the city of Otsego, but they are a resource to people looking to locate here.
Madam President,
Yes.
do we still, cause we have the Elk River Chamber, but do we still belong to the I-94 and to advertise a bit? Then think we stopped at one point because we didn't find any benefit. And is it just the Elk River Chamber we have? No.
Madam President, both chambers, the city is at one point, the city was including paid advertisements within certain
Yeah.
Economic development magazines or distributions where the city was advertising for development and paying for that service. We have ceased that up until now. Again, it's something that there are funds available in the budget to help with marketing efforts if that's something that you believe is helpful for the cost of it.
Does the chamber itself like try to bring business like that with land or promote land or?
Typically, a chamber is more a member
Your business.
society
They have to,
resourcing
they have to
and
pay into
networking, right? They're not an economic development agency.
Okay.
Madam President, we are running up against our time, so if there's any other questions, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a second. Second. Motion by Cory, seconded by Tina. There any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting is ended. Thank you all for attending, and our meeting will start in 6 minutes.
Questions, council member?